Hello, welcome to this webinar related to the Editorial Day 77 from the Wheatbiome project, and it's called Foods Based on Fermented Wheat, a Healthy Alternative. We will talk about what we're going to find in our Wheatbiome project is fermented foods will be a proper solution for our food in a near future. To begin with, we have here Francisco Barba. He's full professor for Nutrition and Food Science area in Universitat de Valencia, and he's the leader of Working Package 3 in the Wheatbiome project. Hi, Francisco.
Well, first of all, I would like to acknowledge the invitation of Jesus from Edagri to do this presentation for the Wheatbiome project, which I think is a really interesting initiative in order to promote or to give an overview of what we are doing science from the University of Valencia in this context of fermentation of cereals, and in particular in the case of wheat. So the case of wheat. So the presentation that I am going to give now is about the fermentation of cereals as a way to improve their functional and healthy properties. As I said all before, this presentation is in the context of the project Wheatbiome related to the unraveling the potential of the wheat microbiome for the development of healthier, more sustainable and resilient wheat-derived food and feed products. In this case, the University of Valencia is the leader of the Working Package 3 of this project. Why is important the fermentation of cereals? Well, first of all, we have to take into account the importance of cereals, because they are the basis of the diet worldwide. For instance, they are cultivated in practically all inhabited regions of the planet, and they are adapted to the temperate, tropical, and arid climates. And among the different cereals, wheat, rice, maize, barley, oats, sorghum, millet account for around 50% of the global agricultural production, so making an idea of the importance of this kind of products for the human consumption. It's important because the cereals are providing around 45–50% of the total caloric energy. They are, for example, in regions like Asia, rice account of 60–70% of the daily energy intake, which is really important. For example, we have in Latin America and Africa, maize and wheat play a similar role. They are the cereals in general a complex carbohydrate source, start with implications, for example, in glycemic index. They contribute also with vegetable proteins, although they are limited in the contribution of protein due to the some limitations in essential amino acids. They also provide the diet fiber, vitamins of group B, and minerals as, for example, iron, zinc, and magnesium. They are also important from a food safety perspective, as they are able to be prolonged, the storage in long times. They are part of the international food aid programs and strategic reserves. They are also consumed in different forms like bread, pasta, tortillas, rice, porridge, fermented drinks, and among other products. And they form part not only of the traditional, but also of the modern diets on all continents. For instance, they are increasing the consumption of new derived food products, fermented food products, is increasing exponentially over the last decades. Cereals in general are not only humanity primary energy source, but also an essential cultural and economic component in the world's diet. Regarding the nutritional limitations of the cereals, it's in the case of wheat and also other cereals, they have a low protein content, for example, compared with other vegetable products like legumes and meat, and also compared to meat. And they have some deficiencies in essential amino acids. For example, in the case of wheat, corn, and rice, it's a deficient in lysine. In the case of corn, it's a deficitary in tryptophan. Regarding the lipids, they are low in healthy fats, and they are a shortage of essential fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6 in balanced proportions. Moreover, regarding the micronutrients like minerals, iron, zinc, calcium and magnesium, they have poor viability, and they have a deficiency of fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, A, E, and K, and some of the vitamins of the group B if they are very refined, for example, in the case of the wheat rice. Regarding the limitations in the viability, it's important that they also have anti-nutrients that reduce the nutrient absorption of these different nutrients, especially in the case of minerals. For example, we have phytates that they inhibit the absorption of iron, zinc, and calcium, tannins that they reduce protein and mineral viability, and also we have enzyme inhibitors like amylase and protease that make digestion difficult. Regarding the composition, it's also interesting to have these fibers and carbohydrates, which are on the one hand very interesting because they can act as a prebiotic and they are modulating the gastrointestinal digestion, but also in the case of whole grains, they are going to be rich in insoluble fiber, but in excess they can reduce the absorption of certain minerals. In the case of refined cereals, they are low in fiber with lower nutritional value and effect on satiety. On the other hand, they have a high glycemic index in some processed varieties, for example, in white rice and flours refined of cereals. Why is important the fermentation? Fermentation is a very interesting tool to improve the nutritional and functional value of cereals. For example, on the one hand, fermentation is in promoting the microbial transformation of cereal components. On the other hand, in the case of lactic acid bacteria, which are the main agents that are used for the fermentation of cereals, not only the only ones, because, for example, yeast can be used also. Fungi also is not so relevant compared to lactic acid bacteria. They are the main agents, and they are also having a probiotic activity. And moreover, the fermentation of products, cereal products, has some benefits attributed, for example, improving the viability, the generation of metabolites, and sensory properties of the new developed products. In the case of the advantage of fermentation, for example, we can find that fermentation is improving the nutritional value by the inducing or promoting the degradation of phytate, thus improving the mineral viability of iron, zinc, calcium, and magnesium. Also, it's able to increase the free amino acids and the protein digestibility. They are also important from a functional point of view. The fermentation is important because it's increasing the phenolic compounds and antioxidant capacity. It's producing bioactive metabolites with prebiotic or even the microorganisms, they can have this probiotic effect, or the probiotics can induce the probiotic growth, and they have beneficial effects on gut microbiota and health. Regarding the increased mineral viability, for example, we can find that after reducing the phytic acid content after the fermentation in cereals like corn, wheat, rice, and oats, is taking into account that this phytic acid is an antinutrient that blocks the absorption of these minerals, can improve this viability. For example, we have the case of sourdough breads, or we have lactic acid fermentation that decreases the phytic acid and improves iron absorption. Moreover, during the fermentation, there are microorganisms that produce bioactive peptides and antioxidants that can contribute to the cardiovascular health and the reduction of oxidative stress. For example, we have the fermented sorghum that produce phenolic compounds with increased antioxidant capacity. We also have an interesting improved digestibility after the fermentation. This is attributed to the breakdown of starch and proteins promoted by the microbial enzymes, making cereals easier to digest. For example, we have the rice fermentation, which starch is partially predigested, facilitating digestion. We have also an increase in some cases of vitamin B group compounds, because, for example, in the case of fermented microorganisms, such as lactobacilli, they can synthesize vitamins like B2, B12, folic acid, etc. One example is the fermented millet. We can find an increase in riboflavin and niacin in this case. Moreover, we have the development of probiotic and probiotic properties. Some fermented cereals contain less microorganisms, like probiotics, or produce probiotic oligosaccharides that support the gut microbiota growth. In the case of fermented oatmeal or rice drinks with Lactobacillus casei, it's observed that these microorganisms can improve the intestinal balance. Moreover, we have also an important reduction of undesirable compounds. Fermentation decreases simple sugar or potentially toxic compounds. For example, in the case of fermentation of nixtamalized corn for pozole, the presence of mycotoxins and fermentable sugars could cause digestive discomfort decreases. So this is an advantage using this fermentation to decrease this kind of compounds. In general, fermentation turns cereals into more nutritious, digestible, and functional foods, increasing antioxidants, vitamins, and biotic compounds, as well as providing probiotics. Here you can find a table where you can see the different advantages and benefits of the different compounds. For example, we have, in the case of wheat, the fermentation decreases phytic acid, increased viability of iron and zinc, and improve the absorption of minerals and prevents the anemia. In the case of sorghum, it's increase the production of phenolic compounds and antioxidants, and is in promoting the cardiovascular protection and reduction of oxidative stress. In the case of rice, it's promoted digestion of starch and proteins, thus having a better digestibility and lower glycemic load. The case of fermented millet is increasing vitamins B2, B3, and folic acid, supporting for energy and metabolism in the nervous system. In the case of oat or rice, the development of probiotic bacteria like Lactobacillus bifidobacterium and probiotic oligosaccharides provides a balance of intestinal microbiota and supports the immune system. For the last but not least, the core, the fermentation can promote the reduction of mycotoxins in simple sugars, lowering the risk of toxicity and better digestive tolerance. Here, you can find a practical example of the experiments that we are doing in the context of Wheatbiome. For instance, this is the first paper, the first scientific paper that we published. It's a summary. It was recently published in the International Journal of Food Microbiology about the identification, safety, evaluation, and probiotic potential of lactic bacteria isolated from wheat. The hypothesis that we use in this study is that we are going to take the lactic acid bacteria identified isolated from the own grains and spikes, thus promoting a better and more specific fermentation. So the process can be improved compared, for example, if we are using other isolated lactic acid bacteria coming from other sources. So for this study, we use 12 wheat samples taken grain and spikes from different regions of Spain. Then we did bacteria isolation enrichment in specific conditions for lactic acid bacteria. We isolated 320 colonies. And after doing the different tests for lactic acid bacteria, we found 199 isolates gram-positive and catalase negatives, which does mean that they are lactic acid bacteria. After that, DNA extraction and molecular characterization was performed. After the species identification was carried out using a 16X ribosomal DNA sequencing in order to assure that we have this lactic acid bacteria in the species. The phylogenetic identification of trees and species shows that the sequence analysis allowed the identification of 8 different species in the grains and spikes obtained for the experiment. In particular, Enterococcus durans, Enterococcus faecium, Enterococcus manti, Lactobacillus casei, Lactobacillus plantarum, luego Lactobacillus coriformis, Pediococcus acidilactici, Pediococcus pentosaceum were the main identified in this work. In order to evaluate the safety and probiotic potential of this lactic acid bacteria, we performed several assays evaluating the safety aspects of selected strains, in this case, the susceptibility to antibiotics, hemolytic activity, and mucin degradation, as well as the possible probiotic characterization of selected strains. In particular, we have analyzed the resistance to simulated gastrointestinal conditions, the autoaggregation and co-aggregation of cells, cell surface, hydrophobicity, antioxidant activity, production of isopolysaccharides, enzyme activity test, and the in vitro adhesion assays using CACO2 cells. The tested lactic bacteria strains were those that we performed the experiments we isolate before in the previous studies. After evaluating the susceptibility to antibiotics and hemolytic activity of the isolates, we observed that all isolates were susceptible to most of the antibiotics tested. So this is a safety rule that is accomplished. On the other hand, no strain of lactobacillus showed hemolytic activity in the blood sugar medium, indicating that it is not virulent nature in vitro. Regarding mucin degradation, neither strain showed the ability to degrade mucin, which is an essential component of the mucosal barrier in the gastrointestinal tract. On the other hand, based on the results of the principal component analysis and heat maps that are shown in the slide, Lactobacillus plantarum, Pediococcus lactobacillus, and Lactobacillus casei, as well as Pediococcus pentosaceus, were recognized as the most promising probiotics compared to other isolates. It's also interesting to mention that most isolates grew well, but better results were observed for Pediococcus pentosaceus, Pediococcus lactobacillus, and Lactobacillus plantarum. Once we did the characterization of the lactobacillus strains, we proceed to the selection of the strains as fermentation started. We observed that Pediococcus pentosaceus and Pediococcus lactobacillus show an absence of virulence, absence of antibiotic resistance, with probiotic potential and good fermentative properties to develop wheat-based fermentative products. Other hypotheses that we were managing during the study is we want to have fermentable sugars in order to promote the fermentation process. On the other hand, we are trying to evaluate the ability of the fermentation to modify the structure of proteins. For that reason, we combine the fermentation with a pretreatment with pulse electric fields. Pulse electric fields consist of a short-term electrical treatment from several nanoseconds to several milliseconds, with electric fields ranging from 100 to 300 volt centimeters to 20 to 40 kilovolt centimeters. These pulse electric fields have been applied for different food applications: extraction of juice, extraction of biotic compounds, improving the wine making process, mitigation of pollutants, fermentation, to promote fermentation. So we consider that this is a very interesting strategy to promote the fermentation. So after using the pulse electric fields as a pretreatment, what we observed is that better results were obtaining more fermentable sugars, proteins, and polyphenols. As can be seen in the slide, independently of the treatment, we observed that pulse electric fields is promoting the increase of the reducing sugar, protein, and phenolic compounds. So the PEF treatment, we can conclude that it was able to extract more reducing sugars, proteins, and phenolic compounds from the wheat. The PEF treatment, the pulse electric field treatment, was able to increase the fermentation rate, as can be seen in the slide, lowering the pH and reaching CFU levels between 8 to 10 and 9 to 10 CFU milliliters. Pulse electric field treatment had a major effect on the composition of phenolic compounds in the beverages, showing that the different fermentation with different strains have an effect or an impact on the composition of these compounds, but less than pulse electric fields. For example, high amount of sinapolyl glucose, which has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial effects on the tract, was observed, and also the contents of fumaric acid, 4-vinylphenol, abigenin, and carbacrol were high, particularly in beverages fermented with Lactobacillus plantarum. In conclusion, we observe that the isolated and identified lactic acid bacteria strains of Pediococcus pentosaceus and Pediococcus lactobacillus show absence of virulence and absence of antibiotic resistance, with probiotic potential and good fermentative properties to develop wheat-based fermentative products. The pulse electric field treatment was able to extract more reducing sugars, proteins, and phenolic compounds from wheat and increase the fermentation rate, lowering the pH in reaching CFU levels accepted as probiotic. The pulse electric field treatment significantly influenced the composition of phenolic compounds in beverage, demonstrating a stronger effect than fermentation with different strains. Pulse electric fields and fermentation treatments led to an increase in sinapolyl glucoside, a compound with antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial properties. In addition, the levels of fumaric acid, 4-polyphenol, abigenin, and carbacrol were elevated, particularly in beverage fermented with Lactobacillus plantarum, suggesting an improvement in the contents of the bioactive compounds. Here, there is a representation of the different references that were used in this presentation. And of course, I would like to acknowledge my team, the Alisos, because without them, it would be impossible to perform the study that we are carrying out in the context of the Wheatbiome project. Here you can find some of the components of the Wheatbiome of the Alisos team. Sorry if I forget, I miss any of the components, but in general we are growing, and then we have a group of more than 30 people involved with professors, postdoc, PhD students, and I am not counting for these purposes with the final master degree or final work degree, but they are also performing an excellent work. So here you have some slides about the team. And again, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to Jesus for the kind invitation, and also the Wheatbiome project for giving me the opportunity to deliver this interesting and time-relevant talk. And hopefully you have enjoyed with the presentation, and I am open for discussion, whatever you want.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for this explanation. And to follow up, we go on with David Hunt. He's a research support manager in GFI Europe, is the Good Food Institute of Europe, and he will going to talk to us about the practical aspects in these products, in fermented products. Hello, hi, David.
Okay, thanks for having me to come and speak at this webinar today. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is David Hunt. I work for the Good Food Institute Europe, and I'm going to spend a few minutes talking a little bit in a more general sense about plant proteins and the role that they can play in helping to build a more sustainable food system. A little bit of an introduction to the Good Food Institute and the work that we do. We are an international nonprofit that is seeking to develop the roadmap for sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. And we focus on three key areas of work: science and technology, corporate engagement, and policy. I myself work in the science and technology team, and really what we focus on there is the development of or advancing foundational open access research in alternative proteins, and aiming to create a thriving research and training ecosystem around those scientific fields. GFI is present in 7 different regions worldwide. We, in that way, can act as a force multiplier, bringing together the expertise of our different teams and departments to the rest of the world, and also bring some cultural insights and a cultural approach to the work that we do in different parts of the world. So what do we focus on? Why do we do this work? Well, by the year 2050, we're going to have to try to feed 10 billion people on Earth, and we are going to need solutions for our global food systems that feed people sustainably, efficiently, and safely. At GFI, we believe that alternative proteins can enhance supply chain resilience, increase food production efficiency, and also provide the foods that people want in a sustainable way, and also in a way that provides new economic opportunities in different places across the world. One of the tools that we have in our toolbox of alternative proteins is probably the one that's most well known, which is plant-based. These are foods that are made from protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, and water that are all sourced from plants. And next generation plant-based foods look, cook, and taste just like conventional animal foods, but come with a significantly lower environmental burden associated with them. So a recent life cycle assessment that we published has found that plant-based meat can lead to up to 79% less land use, 95% less water use, and 89% less greenhouse gas emissions if produced in the right ways. How are plant-based foods made? Well, it starts with source selection, and this means identifying sources of plant protein with desirable characteristics for producing whatever the specific plant-based food it is that you want to make. We then go into ingredient processing, in which raw materials are isolated and functionalized by mechanical and chemical processes to create optimal food ingredients for the end product. And then in end product formulation, we mix together the correct selection of ingredients, and processes are established to create the desired taste, texture, smell, and structure. There is room for innovation across this entire value chain, but one of the really important areas is around source selection and actually finding the right type of plant protein or combinations of plant proteins in order to make the particular food that you're interested in. There's different choice parameters that go into making this decision. I won't list all of them, but some of the most important ones are protein content, quality, allergenicity, sourcing, cost, regulatory concerns, functionality, and also things like aroma, flavor, etc. And if we look down the list of plant protein sources that are used in the food industry today, it's a continuously growing list as people explore new sources of plant proteins. But what we see is when we look across the different parameters for each of these, like protein concentration, allergen risk, commercial stage, functionality, cost, etc., there isn't really a perfect source. All of them have different pros and cons associated with them and different drawbacks that make them a little bit more challenging to work, but also positive things that bring a unique functionality or positive attributes that make them attractive to us. In reality, what actually happens is for the vast majority of plant-based foods that are manufactured today, we use 3 sources of plant protein, which are soy, pea, and wheat. And a large part of that is really down to availability and cost, just the scale at which these things are actually grown and the availability of them on the market. So if we focus in a little bit on wheat, which is obviously the focus of the Wheatbiome project, wheat actually has quite unique functionality and it has really widespread availability, which makes it actually a really great source of plant protein. The global trade of wheat is greater than the sum of all other crops put together. So availability is really not an issue with this. And it also has properties that make it really good for things like elastic dough formation, gelling and binding, which leads to a range of different applications that wheat can be used for. And we see that borne out in the types of products that are used that are manufactured making wheat. Where wheat falls down a little bit is more in the nutrition space. So things like protein bioavailability is not really fantastic in comparison to other sources of protein. Wheat is, of course, limited in lysine, so it doesn't have a complete amino acid profile. And also the big thing, of course, is that wheat is a very common or has a very common allergen in gluten, which is a significant barrier to uptake for certain sections of the population. One of the ways in which we can overcome some of the drawbacks of specific sources of protein is through exploring synergistic combinations. So taking 2 or more different sources of plant protein and combining them together in ways that helps to be complementary or solve certain challenges associated with them. And one of the most common ones in this is soy and wheat being combined together, which allows us to achieve really nice results in terms of texture, especially when it comes to things like trying to mimic muscle texture for structured plant-based meat and fish products through high moisture extrusion. Soy can also be quite complementary to wheat in solving some of the nutritional issues associated with it. For example, soy has a complete amino acid profile and also has a much higher protein availability when compared to wheat, although does not solve, of course, the problem around allergenicity. And when we look at actually, for example, in the US market, the top 10 US plant-based meat retail brands, wheat is a very common ingredient across those and often is used in combination with soy to achieve some of those texturing outcomes that I talked about previously, and also to bring about a balanced nutritional score in terms of amino acid profile. So what's the actual real world implications of all of this? Well, when we look at the market for plant-based foods in Europe and also globally, what we saw from about 2020 to 2022 was quite a significant increase in sales and a proliferation of the different products that were actually available on the market in terms of plant-based foods. What we've seen in the last couple of years is that market growth has stalled a little bit and has become a little bit more heterogeneous, I suppose, across the European market, where we see places like France, Germany, Italy, and Spain showing continued growth in terms of sales value and sales volume, whereas other countries like the Netherlands and the UK, we see actually a drop in sales across both of those metrics. When combined together, those 6 countries still show an overall growth in sales value and sales volume of 1.7% and 4.5% respectively. But actually, a lot of this is driven by cheaper private label products. So basically supermarket brands as opposed to private brands, because those products tend to be cheaper and are more available to consumers, especially in the context of rising food prices over the last number of years. Europe is the largest market for plant-based foods globally, and also by far the largest market for specifically meat and food substitutes. It's followed by Asia Pacific and Australasia, then North America, and then Latin America and the Middle East and Africa come in quite a bit further behind. But as I say, while this market has reached a quite significant size, it has plateaued a little bit over the last number of years. And there are different reasons for that. But one of the main reasons really is that a lot of plant-based foods, whether it's meat or milk substitutes or egg substitutes, they're just not sufficiently solving consumer problems, or they're just not good enough, to be frank, for consumers to come back and continuously pay for products that tend to be more expensive than the conventional alternatives that are available to them. And what that has resulted in also is a slowdown in investment in plant-based companies over the last number of years, where we saw quite significant investment in 2020, 2021, because the market has perhaps not matured in the way that people expected it to, and sales have slowed down. Investment has also slowed down quite significantly as a result. Of course, there's different reasons for this. I've spoken about rising food prices. There's also been quite a challenging inflationary environment over the last number of years that has slowed down investment across a range of different sectors. But a big part of the problem around this is actually just that plant-based foods are not quite good enough yet and are too expensive. And this is borne out in a lot of consumer polling that we've seen. So I pulled some statistics here from the Smart Protein project. This was a Horizon Europe project that was funded a couple of years ago, wrapped up in 2024. And what they found was that price and taste are the main barriers for European consumers when choosing plant-based alternatives. And these findings really are replicated across a lot of consumer studies, both in Europe and further afield. The simple conclusion we take from this is that to achieve widespread uptake of plant-based foods, alternative proteins must be able to compete on taste and price, as well as being nutritious and widely available for purchase for consumers. To do this, there are a range of different technological hurdles that must be overcome. And this spans really the entire production chain for these foods. A lot of these are challenges that actually the industry themselves are not necessarily the best placed people to solve, because they can be relatively low technology readiness level challenges, and are things that actually the academic sphere would be much better placed to solve, to then publish those results, make that information available to the wider ecosystem, and then industry can then take those learnings and actually work with them internally to develop new products. When we look across the value chain, there's opportunities in better raw materials, so actually like breeding new varieties of crops that are specifically optimized for protein quantity, quality, functionality, etc. Protein fractionation, the preparation of ingredients, that's making them more efficient, that's ensuring that the isolates, the concentrates that we produce are more functional. There's a range of different things within that around as well. The use of, for example, fermentation techniques to improve functionality and nutrition and flavor of ingredients. Plant fat profiles are a very important part of developing products that are both nutritious and have a taste and texture that people really enjoy. And then texturization methods covers things like improvements to extrusion, but also the development and optimization of new technologies like shear cell and electrospinning for proteins. There has been, I think, quite significant societal progress in this space over the last number of years. There's actually a number of European governments that are global leaders on driving support policy to accelerate protein diversification, in particular countries in the Nordics, the UK, Germany as well, that have published specific action plans around plant-based foods or alternative proteins and have invested quite a lot of money in them. There's also been pushback at a European level, and in particular with relation to the use of specific terminology on packaging and the use of terms that would be traditionally associated with animal-based foods being used on plant-based foods. One of the things that this really highlights is the need to build stronger and wider alliances with a large range of stakeholders and bring in a really broad range of worldviews so that we can actually build a coalition of people who can make protein diversification come about in a way that is actually long-term sustainable and that satisfies a broad range of different stakeholders. One of the really encouraging things we've seen in the last few years is while private capital has really declined in this space, public funding for research, for academic research, has increased very, very significantly over the last 5 years. and topped out at 320 million euros allocated in 2024 alone. That's about a 300% increase from what that figure was in 2020. The leading countries in this are the UK, Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, and the Nordics. And this funding covers a really broad range of different technological sectors in plant-based, from ingredient optimization, crop development, end product formulation, healthy nutrition, and consumer and market research, among a wide range of others. And one of the things that we see that comes out of this is a blooming of a new scientific field across Europe, with things like the dawn of dedicated alternative protein research centres, a wide range of different Horizon Europe projects focusing on plant-based proteins, but also alternative proteins in a broader sense, and a lot of different areas where specific research centres or universities have developed an expertise in a particular area of alternative proteins and have become world leaders, to be honest, in this space. And as that increase in funding that I spoke about continues to bear fruit, we expect a continued proliferation of this academic field, and for researchers to focus on more and more of the key technological challenges that can enable plant-based foods to achieve taste and price parity with conventional animal foods, and therefore become more attractive to consumers. So before I wrap up, I want to just highlight a bunch of resources that GFI put out every year and make available for free on our website. First up is usually the state of the industry reports. These cover a really broad range of different things, from science and innovation through to the commercial environment, regulation, investment, policy updates, and a lot of other different things. If you want to just really have a one-stop shop for understanding this space, these are the best place to go to get that. GFI also does a range of different technical analyses, looking at things like manufacturing or life cycle assessments or techno-economic assessments or nutrition or lots of other different things. We've done a whole series as well on the European alternative protein research ecosystem, which looks at funding, academic publishing and patents to see where the strengths of that particular ecosystems are and where the opportunities are for growth and for new areas of innovation to be pursued. GFI also has an annual research grants program. So we award research funding, usually around specific technical challenges in alternative proteins. That will open again in the spring of next year. So do keep an eye out for that if that's something that's interesting to you. And that is open to industry, academia, and the nonprofit sector globally. So essentially anybody can apply for that. And with that, I will thank you very much for your time. If you'd like to get in touch, please reach out to europe-scitech@gfi.org. All of the resources I've just spoken about and a whole bunch of other things are available on our website, gfieurope.org. And we are on, of course, all of the different socials if that is your thing. And I'll thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you for your approximation. And to end up with, last but not least, we have here Eduardo Cotillas. Eduardo is the Research and Development and Innovation Director for Food for Life Spain, the technological platform, and he will give us an overview of how research will go on with these products, with these fermented foods in the industry in next years. Hello, Eduardo, it's your turn.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to Food for Life Spain technology platform to this extremely interesting Wheatbiome webinar. I'm very honored to be with all of you, trying to give to you an approach of what Food for Life Spain is representing today, and about what we currently are doing regarding all the fermentations and all the new technologies regarding, in this case, the wheat. First of all, please let me introduce myself. My name is Eduardo Cotillas. I'm the current General Secretary of Food for Life Spain Technology Platform. I'm also the Research Development and Innovation Director at the Spanish Food and Drinks Industries Federation. I'm also the coordinator of the National Food for Life platforms that will be interested in the following slides. So, as I told you before, as the Research Development and Innovation Director, I'm belonging to FIAB. FIAB is the Spanish Food and Drink Industries Federation, I told you before also. And there are 43 chain values that are involved in every single agri-food sector. For example, the dairy sector, the poultry sector, the wine sector, the brewery one, and so on till the 43 associations that I told you before. Of course, in Spain, and I guess in the whole Europe, the food industries or the agri-food chain value is extremely important for all the economy. Being focused on the Spanish sector, we are more than 27,000 companies, most of them SMEs, which is extremely relevant for all the European policies. So I guess it's something that is very, very useful. Of course, all the figures regarding the Spanish sector are jolly good regarding all our trade activities, regarding the level of SMEs I told you before, also regarding the women employment and so on. So it's a very huge sector for the Spanish and the European economy. Of course, we have a very, very good relationship with all the administration, I mean the Spanish and also the European one, in which we are involved in different working groups regarding all the lobby activities and, of course, regarding all the research, development, and innovation activity, regarding all the European policies in the present and in the coming years. So I guess extremely useful for all of us to be in contact with the administration, and of course not only with the administration but with the private sector, the Spanish, and also at the European level throughout our colleagues of Food in Europe, who are our main partners in Brussels. Please let me introduce first of all the idea or the concept of the technology platforms. We have to go till 2006 when the European Commission at the 6th framework program decided to give the floor to every single private sector, in which all the sectors were the ones who were under the responsibility of provide all our priorities to the European Commission in order to get every single call in the way that they should be more useful for all our sector. So it was in that way, first of all, the Food for Life European platform was created in 2006, as I told you before, and also every single national platform were created step by step. In the case of the Spanish one, it was created in 2007, and formally in 2009 with the support of the Spanish Innovation Agency that belongs to the Spanish Ministry of Science and Technology, and even innovation, depending on the legislature in which we are involved in. So every single country in the whole Europe was developing their own platforms, trying to be able to provide all the priorities to the public policies, mainly the European ones, but not only. Nowadays, in 2025, we from Spain are extremely honored to be the coordinators of the National Food for Life technical platforms, as you can see at the slide, in the right part of the slide, in which we are trying to align among all of us our priorities, trying to include also the European policies, and also trying to get more and more projects, as in the case of the Wheatbiome project, in which today you are involved in. At the same time, we are belonging as the representative of the network at the European technology platform, Food for Life 2, in Brussels, where we are directly in contact with the European Commission. Now we are going to share how the Spanish technology platform is working. First of all, the structure, the board that is composed by the main agri-food technical centers in Spain, such as INEA, CNTA, CTMC, IRTA, ANFACO, CIDMA, ANFACO Cecopesca, ASTI, ASINCAR, Tecnalia, and CARTIF. We have also a representative of the regions of Spain. In this case, is Bitartis, that is the representative of Castile and Leon, one of the main regions in Spain, and also the private sector represented by FIAB in the global overview. We have also an advisory council that is represented by the main bodies in the Spanish government regarding the agri-food sector and also the research, development, and innovation activities. Most of all, the Spanish research agency, and that is one of the main partners and supporters of this platform. Also, the CDTI, it is a body that is trying to funding many projects at the Spanish level. Of course, the ISEX, that is the ones who is in charge of every single fair around the world, and also now with a very good approach for all the startups and all the technology regarding the sector. Of course, regarding all the brands and the IP, the Spanish Office for Patents and Brands, and of course the INEA, that is our institute who is in charge of the representative of the agriculture in Brussels, and the Spanish Agency for Food Safety, and also the two ministries that are involved in our activities: the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, and also the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Technology. And I'm very honored because I'm the General Secretary of the Food for Life Spain platform, and also my boss, Mauricio García Quevedo, is the current president of this platform. We have also a unit that is external at this moment regarding all the activities of the communication about our extremely busy activity. This is key. Now we can see the 11 working groups of Food for Life Spain that are trying to respond to every single demand of the agri-food chain value in Spain. We have we could say 5 of them that are very well aligned, 6 of them really very well aligned with different technologies. Of course, food and health, another one that is regarding the quality and sustainability, another one for food safety, another one for consumers, training and talent, and everything that is related with logistics and digitalization. We have also a couple of working groups that are very focused on the retail channel and also on the food service channel, extremely important for the Spanish economy. You know, the tourism is one of the main economic activities here in Spain. And we have also 3 sectorial working groups: the meat industry, the dairy one, and also, and very important for today's webinar, the fruits and vegetables sector working group. Of course, regarding all the pics that you are now seeing at the screen, they are all belonging to different technical centers. They are extremely well experienced about the technologies that are discussed within every single meeting of the Food for Life Spain platform working groups, and they are belonging, as I told you before, to different technical centers, research centers, associations, and also the private sector, trying to give a very good approach of every single activity of the working groups. Also key is the strategic research and innovation agenda. Now the current one is the 2023-2024, in which are represented every single interests of our partners within the agenda, and trying to include, as you can see as the scheme, and trying to include in every single call, every single policy at the Spanish or at European level, trying to get more and more opportunities to fund all the activities of our partners with the RDI projects, of course, directly, or also taking into account all the activity at the Brussels level through Food in Europe. A very swift recap regarding all our partners. Today we are 188, almost 190. That is our goal for 2025 year. So we can see, I don't know if you are very interested in, but I have to recap. Well, they are very powerful agri-food companies. Many of them belonging to the food and drinks industry sector in Spain, but not also. We have 111 companies, also digital ones, also laboratories, also startups that are belonging to our network. So many of them are huge, others are SMEs, but they are trying to get more and more projects within the platform. Now we can see also the technological and research centers. We have all of the Spanish ones who are involved in the activities of the agri-food sector. So we can see also, as I told you before, technological centers and also research centers that are trying to get more and more knowledge, trying to apply all this knowledge to private projects. Of course, universities are extremely important for us. So we have the main universities at a private or also a public level here in Spain that are involved in many projects. And last but not least, we have also the associations that are trying to represent us, as we've been seeing before at the FIAB structure. Also, the most powerful ones are also belonging to Food for Life Spain, and also at a regional level. I told you before, Bitartis, but not only Bitartis, from Navarre, Agri-Food, from Andalusia, Landalus, from the Ebro Valley Food Massy, from Catalonia, the Food Service Cluster, from Galicia, the Cluster Alimentario de Galicia, and also from the Basque Country, the Basque Food Cluster. They also representing mainly very little SMEs, very small SMEs in which all the sector is very well represented. But most of all, today I would like to say thank you very much to the Grupo Editorial Agrícola. It's one of our main partners since 2020, in which they are involved and they are all the time very active in our working groups, and they are trying to deal with every single activity regarding all the communication. Grupo Editorial Agrícola is one of the main media here in Spain of the agri-food sector, so I guess we are very lucky to be with them in our structure, in our Food for Life Spain. So also only a few words regarding the startups that are belonging to our environment. They are belong to the Spanish board regarding many different technologies, such as the health issues, regarding the alternative proteins, regarding the food safety, regarding the digitalization, regarding all the environment activities and so on at the Spanish level, as we can see, and also at a global level, at international level, such as Fenolives or Rebred, that are trying to get more and more solutions for the Spanish and also the European canvas here in Europe. We have a very good relationship with all the rest of platforms, technical platforms that are belonging to the Spanish environment, regarding the wine sector, regarding the chemical one, regarding the biotechnology, or also the fisheries and the veterinary ones that are they're very good friends of us. So we all the Spanish environment is very well connected. At the same time, we have also a specialized group that is called the Circular Economy Interplatform Group, in which many of the ones that have been presented before are involved in. And we from Food for Life Spain are also having a role of leader of the 5 agri-food technical platforms that you can see at the slide. Of course, we are very accustomed of dealing with many projects at the European level, as you can see at the logos, or at the Spanish level and so on. So the figures are very impressive. So I guess we could be very useful for all of you. And well, the most important thing, I guess, is regarding the Wheatbiome European project, of course, and the workshops on today's workshop, foods based on fermented wheat, different and healthy. First of all, as I told you at the beginning, thank you very much for Grupo Editorial Agrícola for taking into account the activity of Food for Life Spain technology platform. Of course, to the rest of the partners of this project, many of them are belonging also to the Spanish sector. So thank you very much for being with all of us. You know, the Wheatbiome is very focused on the different alternatives regarding the uses of the wheat, and most of all today regarding the fermentation and all the opportunities, activities, and perhaps in the future, in the end, regarding all the consumers' approaches, all the new consumers that are worried about their own health. Well, do you know that the Wheatbiome project is trying to study the role of microbial fermentation, the quality, both foods and feeds, considering also the celiac disease or all the interaction between wheat and animal or human microbiota or something. So I guess extremely well aligned with all our activity. I've been presenting you before our strategic research and innovation agenda, and how it could influde in every single policies. Well, these are the clearest examples regarding at least a couple of working groups. Today we've been presenting 2 of them only, but perhaps it could be very well aligned with many different working groups of Food for Life Spain technical platform. For example, in the case of the food and health, that is a very important approach of the Wheatbiome project regarding the alternative proteins. For example, sorry, because in Spanish, because it's our strategic and innovation agenda is regarding all the research about new sources of proteins, regarding new sources of protein from microbes, also from cereals, or also from agriculture, and also trying to improve all the protein quality and from lipids in food throughout new formulations. Sorry, I gone before. Or of course, regarding all the fermentation technology or even instruction for the development of new ingredients, trying to get a good approach of all the microbiome and so on. And of course, regarding all the diseases, celiacs are extremely important for the food and for the food sector here in Spain, and many different functional foods are trying to get new solutions for all these population that are now who are now increasing in Europe. But another approach that we could consider is regarding the fruit and vegetables working group of Food for Life Spain, also regarding the post-harvesting working group of post-harvesting processes, regarding everything regarding the conservation and also the life of all the agri-food products, regarding all the senses, nutritional, and the evolution of physics and chemical parameters. So they are extremely important. Of course, all the technologies are trying to get a good approach regarding the near infrared tools, or even hyperspectral and so on. So they are extremely relevant for all these things that are very well aligned with all the Wheatbiome priorities. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. It's been a pleasure for me to be with all of you today, and I wish we'll be in contact in the coming future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for your explanation, for your participation in this webinar, and thanks all of you that are attending this meeting. If you want to know more about Wheatbiome project, you can access to our website. It's wheatbiome-project.eu. So you're welcome to read and receive information and send us your appreciations about our project. Thank you very much.